I never thought I'd be the kind of person to read someone else's private diary, but there I was, sitting cross-legged on my father's office floor at midnight, holding his leather-bound journal in trembling hands. The study still smelled like him. A mix of coffee and that fancy cologne my mother had given him last Christmas. My name is Jamie, and until 3 hours ago, I was just a normal 15-year-old trying to deal with my dad's cancer diagnosis. Now I'm not sure what I am. It started when I heard voices downstairs. Mom wasn't supposed to be home until tomorrow. She told us she was visiting her sister in Phoenix. But there she was, giggling in our kitchen at midnight with a man who definitely wasn't my father. We need to be careful, I heard Mom say. Thomas isn't completely out of it yet. The man's voice was smooth, confident. Vivian, sweetheart, you worry too much. Everything's going according to plan. I should have stormed down there. Should have screamed or called my dad at the hospital. Instead, I crept into his study looking for, I don't know what. Answers? Evidence? That's when I found the diary, tucked behind some old tax files. The first entry was from 6 months ago. I don't want to believe it, but something's wrong with Vivian. The late nights, the secret phone calls. I've seen how she looks at my business partner, Ethan. But I need proof before I confront her. Jamie needs to be protected. She's all that matters now. My hands were shaking so badly I nearly dropped the journal. Dad had known? All this time. The next entry made my stomach turn. Doctor says it's stage 4. Vivian acted devastated, but I caught her smiling when she thought I wasn't looking. I've changed my will today. Everything goes to Jamie, with Mom as trustee until she's 21. Vivian won't see it coming. I heard footsteps on the stairs and quickly shoved the diary into my hoodie pocket. The voices were getting closer. I'll check on Jamie, Mom said. She should be asleep by now. I scrambled to my feet, heart pounding. There was no time to return the diary to its hiding place. Instead, I dove into the hallway bathroom, closing the door just as their shadows passed by. Your daughter's quite the daddy's girl, the man then said. Might be a problem later. Mom's laugh was cold, unfamiliar. She's just a kid. Once Thomas is gone, she'll adjust. They all do. I pressed my hand against my mouth, fighting back tears. The mother I thought I knew would never talk about Dad dying like it was something to look forward to. Would never dismiss me like I was just some inconvenience to her plans. When their footsteps faded, I snuck back to my room, diary clutched against my chest like a shield. Sleep was impossible. I spent the rest of the night reading entry after entry, watching my father's suspicions grow alongside his illness. The last entry was from just 2 days ago, written in shaky handwriting. Jamie, if you're reading this, I'm so sorry. I should have protected you better. Don't let them win. You're stronger than you know. Love, Dad. Morning came too quickly. I hid the diary under my mattress and got ready for school, my mind racing. Mom was in the kitchen, acting like nothing had happened, like she hadn't spent the night plotting with her lover in our home, while Dad lay dying in a hospital bed. Morning, sweetie, she said, sliding a plate of pancakes across the counter. Sleep well. I looked at her perfect makeup, her practiced smile, and felt sick. Fine, I lied, pushing the plate away. I'm not hungry. She frowned, touching my forehead. You feeling okay? You look pale. I jerked away from her hand. For the first time, I saw what Dad must have seen, the calculation behind her concern, the performance of it all. I'm fine, I repeated, grabbing my backpack. Just tired. As I walked to school, Dad's last words echoed in my head. Don't let them win. But how was I, a 15-year-old kid, supposed to stop whatever my mother and Ethan were planning? I didn't know yet. But I was about to find out. The hospital always smelled like despair mixed with hand sanitizer. I sat beside Dad's bed watching him sleep, while Mom texted someone in the corner. Probably Ethan. My stomach churned every time her phone lit up with a new message. I'm going to get coffee, Mom announced, not even looking up from her screen. Want anything, Jamie? I shook my head, keeping my eyes on Dad. The moment she left, I pulled out my phone and started recording just in case. Dad had taught me to always document everything in business. Trust but verify, he'd say. Now I was using his lessons against the people trying to hurt him. His eyes fluttered open. Hey, kiddo. His voice was weaker than yesterday, but his smile was the same. Where's your mother? Coffee run. I squeezed his hand. How are you feeling? Like I could run a marathon. He tried to laugh but ended up coughing instead. When he caught his breath, he looked at me with worried eyes. Jamie, there's something we need to talk about. The door opened and Mom swept in with her coffee. Dad immediately went quiet, and I felt the weight of unspoken words hanging between us. Thomas, darling, Ethan called about the Peterson contract, Mom said, settling into her chair. He needs your signature on some documents. Dad's face hardened. Tell Ethan nothing gets signed until I review everything personally. But honey, he says it's urgent. No signatures, Dad repeated firmly. I watched Mom's perfectly manicured fingers tighten around her coffee cup. For a split second, her mask slipped, and I saw raw anger flash across her face. The tension was broken by a knock at the door. Grandma Margaret walked in, bringing with her the smell of fresh-baked cookies and normalcy. Well, this is a gloomy bunch, she announced, setting down her purse. Thomas, you look terrible. Vivian, that shade of lipstick doesn't suit you at all. I had to hide my smile. Grandma Margaret had never bothered with social niceties, especially when it came to Mom. Margaret, Mom said through gritted teeth. What a surprise. Shouldn't be. I'm here every Tuesday. Grandma turned to me. Jamie, dear, help me get some ice for your father. In the hallway, Grandma grabbed my arm. Something's wrong. I can see it in your face. I hesitated, then pulled her into an empty waiting room. I found Dad's diary, I whispered, quickly explaining everything I'd discovered. Grandma's face grew darker with each word. When I finished, she was silent for a long moment. I always knew that woman would bring trouble, she finally said. But this. She squeezed my hand. We need proof, Jamie. Real proof. I've been recording everything, I admitted. But it's not enough. No, it's not. She glanced toward the door. Your mother's planning something with that snake Ethan. Those documents she mentioned? I bet they're not what they seem. Before I could respond, we heard Mom's heels clicking down the hallway. Jamie? Margaret? Where did you go? Remember, Grandma whispered quickly. Your father built that company from nothing. Don't let them steal it. When we returned with the ice, Mom was on the phone again, speaking in hushed tones. She quickly hung up when she saw us. Everything okay? I asked innocently. Of course, sweetie. Her smile didn't reach her eyes. Just business. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about those documents Mom wanted Dad to sign. Around midnight, I heard her car start up. Through my window, I watched her drive away, heading to Ethan's, no doubt. I grabbed my phone and called Riley, my best friend since 3rd grade. She answered on the first ring. Your mom just left again? She asked without preamble. Yeah. Riley, I need a favor. A big one. Does it involve breaking and entering? Maybe just a little entering. Mom's office isn't technically locked. I'll be there in 10 minutes, Riley said. And Jamie? We're going to catch them. Whatever they're planning, they won't get away with it. As I waited for Riley, I pulled out Dad's diary and read his last entry again. Don't let them win. Well, Dad, I thought tonight we start fighting back. Little did I know what we'd find in Mom's office would change everything. Riley's flashlight beam swept across Mom's office as we crept inside. The house felt different at night, like it was holding its breath, waiting to catch us. Your mom's organizational skills are scary, Riley whispered, pointing at the meticulously labeled files on the desk. Who color codes their folders? Someone with secrets to hide, I muttered, pulling open the bottom drawer. My hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped my phone, which I'd set to record everything, just in case. That's when we found it. A thick manila envelope marked Peterson contract, hidden beneath some tax forms. Inside were documents that made my blood run cold. Transfer of ownership papers for Dad's company, all prepared and waiting for his signature. Look at the fine print, Riley said, pointing to a clause near the bottom. If he signs this, he's basically giving everything to Ethan. Before I could respond, headlights swept across the windows. Mom was home early. Hide, I hissed, shoving the papers back into the drawer. We barely made it into the coat closet when the front door opened. But Mom wasn't alone. The papers are ready, Ethan's voice drifted in. We just need Thomas to sign them before. before he's too far gone to understand what he's signing? Mom's laugh was brittle. The doctors say it could be any day now. Vivian, darling, you're sure about this? Once it's done. I've spent 15 years playing the perfect wife, the devoted mother. I deserve something for my trouble. My chest felt tight. 15 years. I was 15. She'd been planning this since I was born? And what about Jamie? Ethan asked. She'll be fine. Children are resilient. Besides, once we have control of the company, we can send her to some boarding school overseas. She's too much like Thomas. Always watching, always suspicious. Riley grabbed my arm, probably worried I burst out of the closet right then. But I stayed frozen, recording every word as Mom and Ethan discussed their plans to dismantle my father's life's work. Finally, they left for the bedroom upstairs. Riley and I slipped out, but in my hurry, I knocked over an umbrella stand. The crash seemed to echo through the house. Jamie. Mom called down. Is that you? Sorry. Called back thinking fast. Just getting some water. Everything okay down there? Fine. Go back to sleep. I grabbed Riley's hand and we ran. Once we were safely in my room, Riley turned to me. Jamie, this is huge. We have to tell someone. Who? The police? They can't do anything. Dad hasn't signed anything yet. I played back the recording, my mother's cold words making me feel sick all over again. But Grandma Margaret was right. We need more proof. What are you thinking? I pulled out Dad's diary. Mom and Ethan are meeting their lawyer tomorrow at the Silver Spoon Cafe. Dad wrote about it here. He had someone following them. You want to spy on them? In public? No, I said slowly. I want to do something better. I showed her the cafe's website on my phone. They're hiring servers for the breakfast shift. Riley's eyes widened. Jamie, no. That's crazy. Crazy enough to work. You said your cousin manages the place, right? Yeah, but... Then call her. Tell her you know someone perfect for a one-day trial shift. I felt something hardening inside me, like steel forming in a forge. Mom never looks at servers. They're beneath her notice. And Ethan's never even met me. This is insane, Riley said, but she was already pulling out her phone. If they catch you, they won't. I thought about Dad in his hospital bed, about Mom's calculated betrayal, about 15 years of lies. Besides, what choice do I have? They're going to destroy everything Dad built. As Riley made the call, I stared at my reflection in the window. Tomorrow I wouldn't be Jamie Caldwell, devoted daughter. I'd be just another faceless server, invisible enough to witness everything. And this time I'd make sure everyone else saw the truth too. The Silver Spoon Cafe's kitchen was chaos, but it gave me the perfect cover. Nobody questioned the new server nervously fumbling with plates. They were too busy with the breakfast rush. I adjusted my borrowed uniform and name tag reading Sarah, while watching Mom's usual table through the service window. Order up for table 12, someone shouted, making me jump. That's your mother's table, Riley's cousin Emma whispered, sliding past me with a coffee pot. Remember, act natural. You're just another face in the crowd. Mom arrived right on schedule, Ethan close behind. They sat in their usual corner booth, the one partially hidden by a decorative screen. Perfect for secret conversations. Not so perfect for their plans to stay secret. I grabbed the coffee pot and approached their table, keeping my head down. Coffee? Mom barely glanced at me. Yes, fine. My hand shook slightly as I poured, but neither of them noticed. They were too absorbed in their paperwork. The lawyers are concerned about the timing, Ethan was saying. If Thomas dies before signing. He won't, Mom cut in sharply. I've arranged everything. Tomorrow morning when Jamie's at school, I'm bringing the papers to the hospital. He'll be cooperative. The coffee pot nearly slipped from my hand. What did she mean by cooperative? More coffee? I asked, desperate to hear more. No, and we need privacy, Ethan snapped. I retreated to the kitchen, my mind racing. Tomorrow morning. They were moving faster than I'd expected. I had to warn Dad, but how? Mom barely left his side during visiting hours. My phone buzzed in my apron pocket. A text from Grandma Margaret. Emergency. Call now. I ducked into the break room. Grandma. Jamie, where are you? Your father's asking for you. The doctors say. Her voice cracked. You need to come now. The world tilted sideways. I'm on my way. Back in the dining room, Mom and Ethan were huddled over what looked like medical documents. I wanted to grab them, to scream, to expose everything right there. Instead, I yanked off my apron and ran. At the hospital, Dad looked smaller somehow, drowning in white sheets and medical equipment. Grandma Margaret sat beside him, holding his hand. When she saw me, her eyes were red-rimmed but determined. Jamie, Dad whispered. Where's your mother? She's busy. The lie tasted bitter. He nodded slowly. Good. We need to talk. Margaret, the envelope. Grandma pulled out a thick manila envelope from her bag. Are you sure about this, Thomas? Show her. Inside were documents, lots of them. But these weren't like the ones Mom and Ethan had. These were different. Proof of shell companies, fake accounts, years of systematic theft from Dad's business. All traced back to Ethan. Your mother thinks she's so clever, Dad said, his voice stronger now. But I've known about Ethan's schemes for months. Been gathering evidence, building a case. Why didn't you say anything? I asked. Because, Grandma Margaret cut in, we needed them to show their hand, to prove what they were planning. And now we have it, I said, pulling out my phone and playing the recording from the cafe. Dad's eyes widened as he listened. When it finished, he reached for my hand. You're so much braver than I was, Jamie. I should have confronted them years ago. It's not too late, I started, but a commotion in the hallway cut me off. I don't care about visiting hours. Mom's voice carried through the door. That's my husband. Dad squeezed my hand. Hide these, he whispered, pushing the envelope toward me. And Jamie? Whatever happens next, remember. The truth always comes out. I barely had time to stuff the envelope into my backpack before Mom burst in. Ethan right behind her. She froze when she saw us all there. Her carefully applied makeup not quite hiding her shock. Family meeting? She asked, trying to smile. How lovely. But her eyes were fixed on Dad's hand, still clasped in mine, and for the first time, I saw real fear in my mother's face. The machine started screaming at 3:47 a.m. I know because I was watching the clock, counting minutes while Dad slept, when suddenly everything went wrong. Code Blue, room 415, blared over the speakers. Doctors rushed in, shoving me aside. Mom wasn't there. She'd left hours ago with Ethan, claiming exhaustion. Only Grandma Margaret and I had stayed, keeping our vigil. Jamie, Dad had whispered earlier between labored breaths. The safe. Behind the painting in my office. Remember the combination. Your wedding anniversary, I'd answered automatically. He'd smiled weakly. No. Your birthday. It's always been your birthday. Now, watching the doctor's work, those words echoed in my head. The safe. Whatever was in there, he wanted me to find it before Mom did. Clear. Someone shouted. Dad's body jerked. Grandma Margaret pulled me close, her arms steel bands around my shoulders. Look at me, not at them, she ordered. Whatever happens next, we stick to the plan. The monitor's steady tone turned into peaks and valleys again. The doctors stepped back, talking in low voices about stabilization and time running out. My phone buzzed, a text from Riley. Your mom just left her house. With suitcases. The floor seemed to tilt beneath my feet. Grandma, I whispered, showing her the message. Her face hardened. Go. I'll stay with your father. Whatever's in that safe, we can't let them get to it first. I ran. The hospital corridors blurred past, my footsteps echoing in the pre-dawn emptiness. Outside, Riley was waiting in her sister's borrowed car. Mom's heading to the house, she said as I jumped in. Ethan's car is behind her. We beat them there by minutes. The house was dark and silent as I fumbled with my key. Up the stairs, down the hall, into Dad's office, every shadow seemed to reach for us. Hurry, Riley whispered, watching the street. The painting was heavy, but we managed to move it. My fingers trembled as I spun the dial. My birthday, 0-7-2-5. The safe clicked open just as headlights swept across the windows. Inside was a single USB drive and a letter addressed to me. I shoved both into my pocket as car doors slammed outside. Jamie. Mom's voice carried up from downstairs. Why are the lights on? Riley grabbed my arm. Back door. Now. We made it halfway down the back stairs when the office light flicked on above us. Mom's gasp was audible even from here. "The safe," she hissed. "Ethan, it's open." We ran. Through the kitchen, past the garage into the pre-dawn darkness. Behind us, I heard Mom shouting my name, her voice cracking with something that might have been fear or rage. My phone rang. Grandma Margaret. "Jamie, where are you?" "Got it," I gasped, still running. "Whatever it is, I got it. Come back to the hospital. Now." Her voice changed. "Your father. He's asking for you. It's time." The world stopped spinning. Riley must have seen something in my face because she was already turning the car around, heading back to the hospital. We made it in time. Barely. "Did you get it?" Dad whispered when I reached his side. I squeezed his hand. "Yes. Good girl." His eyes drifted to the door where Mom stood, breathless from chasing us. "Vivian." Perfect timing. Always were good at that. "Thomas," Mom started, but he cut her off. "I know about the contracts, Vivian. About Ethan. About everything." Each word seemed to cost him, but he kept going. "Jamie knows too. And soon everyone will." Mom's perfectly composed face cracked. "Thomas, please." The monitor started screaming again. This time, when the doctors rushed in, they didn't make us leave. Maybe they knew. Maybe they saw in Dad's eyes what we all saw, that this time was different. He squeezed my hand one last time. "Remember," he whispered, "the truth always comes out." I finished for him. He smiled. And then he was gone. In the chaos that followed, I felt the USB drive pressing against my hip, heavy with secrets. Mom stood frozen in the doorway, mascara tracking down her cheeks, looking lost for the first time in my life. The truth was coming out, all right. But first I had a funeral to plan. The funeral home smelled like artificial flowers and secrets. I sat in the front row, Dad's USB drive heavy in my pocket, while Mom played the grieving widow perfectly. Even her tears seemed choreographed. "Such a tragedy," people kept saying. "And so young. If they only knew." The lawyer, Mr. Davidson, arrived exactly on schedule. Mom's face lit up when she saw him, but something in his expression made my stomach clench. "Before we proceed with the memorial," he announced, "Mr. Caldwell requested that his last will and testament be read here, among family and friends." Mom's hand found mine, squeezing too tight. "Jamie, darling, perhaps we should wait. The reading was specifically scheduled for today," Mr. Davidson continued, at Thomas's insistence. I watched Mom's perfectly manicured nails dig into her palm. Beside her, Ethan shifted uncomfortably. "To my beloved wife, Vivian," the lawyer read, and Mom sat up straighter. "I leave you with the knowledge that I know everything. The affair, the embezzlement, the planned takeover. Everything." The room went dead silent. Mom's hand jerked away from mine like she'd been burned. "To my daughter, Jamie, I leave controlling interest in Caldwell Construction, to be managed by my mother Margaret until Jamie's 21st birthday. Additionally, all personal assets and properties are to be held in trust for Jamie's benefit." "This is ridiculous." Mom stood up, her voice shaking. "He was sick, not thinking clearly. The will was updated and notarized 3 months ago," Mr. Davidson cut in. "Thomas was of sound mind. He was manipulated." Mom pointed at me, mascara starting to run. "By them. His mother and that calculating little Vivian." Grandma Margaret's voice cracked like a whip. "Think very carefully about your next words." That's when I pulled out the USB drive. Dad left something else too. Mom's face went white. "Jamie, wait." I handed it to Mr. Davidson, who plugged it into his laptop. The projector screen at the front of the room, meant for a photo tribute, flickered to life. Security camera footage filled the screen. Mom and Ethan in Dad's office late at night rifling through files. Bank statements showing systematic theft. Recordings from the cafe, from the hospital, all of it playing out in high definition. "Turn it off," Mom whispered. "Why?" My voice shook. "Isn't this what you wanted? For everyone to see the truth. You don't understand." "I understand perfectly. You never loved him. Any of it. It was all just a game to you." Ethan stood up, straightening his tie. "This is all very dramatic, but these videos prove nothing illegal." Actually, a new voice cut in. They prove quite a bit. Two men in suits stepped forward from the back of the room. Police detectives, I realized. Dad had thought of everything. Vivian Caldwell and Ethan Grant, one said. We'd like you to come with us to answer some questions about financial fraud and conspiracy. What happened next seemed to play out in slow motion. Mom lunging for the laptop, Ethan making a break for the door, the detectives moving in, and me standing there watching my family implode in front of everyone we knew. Jamie, Mom called as they led her away. Please, I can explain everything. But I turned away, her words hitting my back like stones. Later, after the chaos died down and most people had left, I sat alone in the empty funeral home. The photo tribute now played as intended. Images of Dad through the years. Always smiling, always strong. You did the right thing, Grandma Margaret said, sitting beside me. Then why does it feel so awful? Because you're not like them. You still care. I watched Dad's face smiling down at us. What happens now? Now. She squeezed my hand. Now we rebuild. Together. But as we left the funeral home, I couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't over. Mom's last look hadn't been one of defeat. It had been a promise. And I had a feeling I knew exactly what she was promising. The police station's interview room felt smaller with each passing hour. Mom sat across from me, her orange jumpsuit a jarring contrast to her usual designer clothes. 2 weeks in jail had stripped away her perfect makeup and manicure, but somehow she looked more dangerous, not less. You really think you've won, don't you? She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. My clever, righteous daughter. This isn't about winning. I placed Dad's diary on the table between us. It's about the truth. The truth. She laughed. You want the truth? Your father trapped me. Married me when I was barely older than you are now. Did you ever wonder why? My hands clenched under the table. Don't. Because I was pregnant. With a baby that wasn't his. Her words hit like slaps. But I lost it. And by then I was stuck. He knew what he was doing, Jamie. The perfect businessman. Always in control. The detective behind the two-way mirror had warned me about this. How she'd try to manipulate me. Twist everything around. But knowing it was coming didn't make it hurt less. So that justifies stealing from him? Planning to take everything while he was dying. I earned that money. She leaned forward, mask finally cracking. 15 years playing the devoted wife, raising his precious daughter. I was never precious to you. The words came out before I could stop them. I was just part of your cover story. Something flickered in her eyes, pain maybe or regret. But it vanished quickly. You're right, she said softly. You were always his. Never mine. Just like everything else. The door opened. Ethan was let in, handcuffed, looking considerably less polished than the last time I'd seen him. Showtime, he said, taking the seat beside Mom. Did you tell her? Tell me what? Mom's smile returned, triumphant now. About the offshore accounts. The ones your father never found. The ones with your name on them. My blood ran cold. You're lying. Am I? She slid a paper across the table. Check the dates. Those accounts were created the day you were born. Your father wasn't the only one making plans. I stared at the document, recognition hitting hard. The account numbers matched ones I'd seen in Dad's files, the ones he'd been investigating before he died. Why are you showing me this? Because, Ethan said, those accounts are still active, and the statute of limitations on reporting them expires in 48 hours. Mom reached across the table, her fingers brushing mine. I jerked away. You have a choice, Jamie. Turn in those accounts and you'll implicate yourself in tax fraud. Stay quiet and well. She shrugged. Let's just say there's enough there for college. Maybe even that art school you always wanted. The room seemed to spin. Dad's voice echoed in my head. The truth always comes out. I stood up, chair scraping loud against the floor. Detective Carter? I called. The door opened. The detective entered, followed by Mr. Davidson and another man I didn't recognize. Did you get all that? I asked. Mom's face went slack as Carter nodded, holding up a recording device. Conspiracy to commit tax fraud, the unknown man said, adding that to the existing charges. I'm Agent Phillips, IRS criminal investigation. You were wearing a wire? Mom whispered. My own daughter? I learned from the best. I picked up Dad's diary. You taught me all about playing roles, remember? As they led them away, Mom stopped at the door. I did love you, Jamie. In my way. I know, I said. That's what makes it worse. Outside, Grandma Margaret was waiting with Riley. They didn't ask questions, just hugged me while I finally let myself cry. Let's go home, Grandma said. Home. Not the house filled with lies and hidden accounts, but Grandma's little cottage by the lake, where Dad used to take me fishing, where the truth didn't hurt quite so much. The truth always comes out. But sometimes I was learning it sets you free in ways you never expected. 6 months after the trial, I stood in front of Dad's office at Caldwell Construction, key trembling in my hand. The company had survived barely. After the scandal, Grandma Margaret had kept things running with help from Dad's most trusted employees. But today was different. Today was my 16th birthday. You don't have to do this now, Grandma said beside me. But I did. The letter from Mom had arrived that morning. Her prison stationery stark and official. I hadn't opened it yet, but its presence in my pocket felt like a burning coal. The office looked exactly as Dad had left it. His coffee mug still sat on the desk, a ring stain beneath it. Family photos lined the walls, moments frozen in time when we'd all pretended to be happy. He kept everything, I murmured, running my fingers over his desk calendar. Even after he knew about Mom, he kept pretending for me. No, Grandma corrected gently. He kept fighting for you. There's a difference. I sat in his chair, the leather still holding the shape of him somehow. The computer hummed to life and I typed in my birthday. The password he'd chosen long before any of this began. A video file popped up immediately. For Jamie's 16th birthday. My throat tightened. Grandma, I'll give you a minute. Dad's face filled the screen, recorded in this very office. He looked tired but determined. Happy birthday, sweetheart. If you're watching this, then everything went according to plan. The truth came out just like I promised. He smiled sadly. But that's not why I made this video. I pressed my hands against the desk, steadying myself. I need you to understand something. Your mother. She wasn't always what she became. There was light in her once, joy. The world just taught her the wrong lessons about survival. He leaned closer to the camera. Don't let it teach you the same ones. The letter in my pocket seemed heavier. You'll have choices to make now. About forgiveness, about trust. About who you want to be. Choose wisely, but choose with your heart, not just your head. His eyes crinkled with that familiar warmth. I love you, Jamie. That's the truest thing I know. The screen went dark. With shaking hands, I opened Mom's letter. Dear Jamie, I won't ask for forgiveness. We both know I haven't earned it. But there's something you should know. The day you were born, your father made me a promise. He said no matter what happened between us, he would make sure you grew up strong enough to face the truth, whatever it might be. He kept his promise. I broke mine. The offshore accounts weren't just insurance policies. They were escape routes. Not just from your father, but from myself. I never used them because deep down I knew. Running away doesn't change who you are. You're stronger than I ever was. Braver too. Don't let my mistakes become your boundaries. Love, even if I showed it wrong. Mom. Riley found me later at the lake behind Grandma's cottage, skipping stones like Dad taught me. You okay? She asked, settling beside me. No, I admitted. But I will be. The next stone skipped 5 times before sinking. Dad's record was 7. I'm keeping the company, I said finally. But I'm changing things. Starting a scholarship program for kids who've lost parents. Maybe a support group. Turning pain into purpose? Something like that. I pulled out Mom's letter. Want to help me write a response? Riley grinned. Always. The sun was setting over the lake, painting everything in shades of gold and promise. Somewhere between the truth coming out and the healing setting in, I'd learned something Dad never got the chance to tell me. Sometimes the strongest choice isn't between forgiveness and justice, but finding the courage to hold both at once. I had time to figure out the rest. After all, I was my father's daughter. And my mother's too, for better or worse. But most importantly, I was finally completely myself.